Hi there, my name's Simon Drew, and I'd like to welcome you to the Practical Stoic Podcast, where I give you practical Stoic advice for modern times. If you'd like to learn more about Stoicism, or if you want some added inspiration in your day, just go to my website. It's risetothegoodlife.com. If you're interested in transforming your life with Stoic principles, then I also offer one-on-one coaching. To book your first free session, just head to risetothegoodlife.com/coaching and follow the links. But for now, enjoy this episode. Hi there, my name's Simon Drew, and welcome to another episode of the Practical Stoic Podcast. I hope you're doing really well wherever you are, and I just wanted to give a quick shout out to everybody who's in the Facebook group, the Practical Stoic Mastermind, because some of you may have seen the video that I posted, the live video where I was on top of the mountain and I was telling you the story about the climb and everything like that. And if you've seen that video, then you might know a lot about what I'm going to be talking about in this episode. But nonetheless, I hope that you will get something new out of this episode, and I hope there'll be something that you can take away that you didn't get from that live video that I did. So, by all means, keep on listening, and I hope that you enjoy this episode of the Practical Stoic Podcast. As many of you will know, I live on the beautiful Sunshine Coast in Queensland, Australia. Here on the coast we have incredible beaches, mountains and hiking, and most weekends I try to go and climb at least one mountain. The most popular group of mountains that we have here are called the Glasshouse Mountains, which is actually a group of volcanic plugs, or in other words, they used to be volcanoes until the lava turned into rock and the dirt around the volcano fell away. These mountains are challenging, and yet they are also a quick climb, so you don't have to spend the whole day. So anyway, yesterday I decided to climb the mountain called Mount Tibrogargan, which really has two routes to the top. There's one route that goes up the westerly side of the mountain, which 99% of people take, and then there's a route that only rock climbers and crazy people take, which is up the easterly side of the mountain. Now, having climbed the western track many times, I decided to become one of those crazy people who would climb the eastern cliff face. And that's really where the story begins. So I woke up at about 3 o'clock in the morning and got to the mountain by about 4. Obviously it was still dark out, but by the time I actually found the track I was looking for, it was light enough to start climbing without a torch. Within about 50 meters of climbing the cliff, it had become apparent to me that I absolutely had bitten off more than I could chew. The rock face was so steep that it was safer for me to keep on climbing up the mountain than it was to go back down without any abseiling equipment. With only 10 meters of rope, no helmet, no other climbing gear, and a heavy backpack that was making things complicated, I realized that this was going to be not only difficult, but downright irresponsible. So as I headed up the mountain slowly, climbing around the exposed ledges looking for the correct path, I realized that failure was not an option. One wrong step, one rash decision could absolutely have led to death. I was definitely scared, and at some points looking down would even lead me to having shaking legs, which was not good. And so I basically decided that I had 3 options. The first option was to turn back. But as I said, that would have been a fatal mistake seeing as I had no abseiling gear. The second option was to call for emergency assistance and be airlifted off the mountain, which happens at least once a week on these mountains. And the third option was to control my fear and keep on going up the mountain. And that's the option that I chose. I figured that if many other people had succeeded in free climbing this side of the mountain, then I probably could too. I also really didn't want to make the evening news. And so you're probably wondering why I'm telling you this story. And the reason is because while I was climbing up the cliffs, I really learned a lot about how Stoicism has been impacting my life over the past year or so, particularly in this situation with respect to how I handle my fear. While I was climbing this cliff, I really thought about Stoic principles many times, but one principle that came to my rescue was the trichotomy of control. And here's how it helped me. When I was scared, or when I felt as though I was in way over my head, I simply decided to pause for a moment and take notice of what was in my control and what was not. There were many things not in my control. For example, I couldn't control how challenging and dangerous the cliffs were. I couldn't control what obstacles lied ahead. I couldn't control whether or not the looming rain cloud would swing my way and make the rocks slippery. I couldn't control the wind. I couldn't control the height that I was at. I couldn't control the loose rocks that have been known to fall down the mountain. And I couldn't control the fact that to turn around and go down the mountain would be far more dangerous than going up. But even though there were many things I couldn't control, there were also many things that I could control. I could regulate my breath so that I remained calm. I could decide to be patient and to take my time while finding the right actions to take. I could pause for as long as I wanted and plan my next moves. I could humble myself and not allow my pride to make me believe that I was capable of going faster or of taking riskier moves. I could be mindful in every moment and think clearly about the potential hazards within my vicinity. And finally, I could decide to look forward to where I wanted to go, as opposed to looking down to see where I could be if I fell. Every time I thought about what I could control and what I couldn't, I felt peaceful inside, and I realized that I could actually be extremely effective based on what I had control over. And then I also realized that this is exactly what the Stoics promise. Epictetus, for example, said, quote, "Some things are within our control and some things are not. It is only after you have faced up to this fundamental rule and learned to distinguish between what you can and can't control that inner tranquility and outer effectiveness become possible." End quote. So this is exactly what I felt when I used this principle. I was very worried at many points on the mountain, but that worry was only hindering my ability to fix my situation. When I decided to look at what I did and did not have control over, I felt that inner tranquility and outer effectiveness that Epictetus promised. I had come to terms with my situation, I realized that this was my fault, and I decided to focus only on what I could control, and I genuinely feel like that decision played a large role in my getting up to the top of the mountain injury-free. Something that I really think I've learned lately is that fear, among other negative emotions like anger or fury, is something that can completely ruin your chances of being effective in whatever you're doing. And what's even more important to know is that there will be times in your life when you will feel that fear, or anger, or sadness, or rage. This will happen, and there will be very little that you can do about it. But what's most important is not the emotion itself, but rather it's how you react as a result of feeling that emotion. So, for example, something makes you angry. Do you cry about it? Or do you take action and try to make the situation different next time? In my case, it was fear. And instead of allowing that fear to make me weak and ineffective, I decided to use Stoic philosophy to help me to get out of that hairy situation. And it's also important to understand that all of these emotions have their own evolutionary benefit. For example, if our ancient ancestors decided to crawl into the fetal position and cry every time they felt fear, then they would have been eaten by a tiger pretty fast, and we might not have been alive today. But they didn't do that. They saw the harmful situation, in this case a tiger, they felt the fear, and because of that fear they immediately took action by either fighting the tiger or running as fast as they could in a different direction. These were effective responses, which is why they survived and those who cried didn't. So now my question to you is this. Have we become so comfortable in our modern lives that we have forgotten that it's not the emotion that matters, but rather it's the action that we take as a result of feeling that emotion that's important? I would argue that we have, and I would say that Stoicism goes a long way towards remedying this by giving us frameworks to live by which allow us to get the most out of every emotion, good and bad. In my own situation, the emotion was obviously fear, and Stoicism gave me the tools to turn that fear into a response that was effective and useful. I hope this episode has given you some new things to think about when it comes to your own. I know that most of you will already be doing this, but for those of you who are new to Stoicism, I hope that you too will be able to break through your barriers by focusing only on what you can control. As you do this, I know that you'll find Stoicism to be an extremely powerful tool in your life. I'll talk to all of you next time, but until then, I hope that this episode has helped you on your rise to the good life. Ciao. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Practical Stoic Podcast. I hope that you've gotten a lot of value out of it, and I hope that it helps you to live a better life. If you have enjoyed the podcast, then don't forget to subscribe so that you'll be the first to know when there are new episodes. If If you really love the podcast, then I would appreciate a positive review, whether that's on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever else you listen. Don't forget that if you're interested in one-on-one Stoic coaching, then you can head to risetothegoodlife.com/coaching to book your first free session today.